All right, howdy everybody. This is Taylor, a fellow with Georgia Equality. Today we are celebrating June 5th, which is HIV Long-term Survivors Awareness Day. I will be having a conversation here with our Youth HIV Policy Advisor, Kayla. We'll be talking in depth about what it means to be a long-term survivor, her story specifically, or general opinions around the day and why it is important. I will start with a brief introduction about June 5th, HIV Long-term Survivors Awareness Day. June 5th specifically marks 40 years since the CDC first published a report on what would be later known as HIV and AIDS. For that, today, June 5th, is designated as HIV Long-term Survivors Awareness Day, a day dedicated to the first generation of persons aging with HIV, which is important. Roughly a quarter of the 1.2 million people living with HIV currently are considered long-term survivors. And in honor of today, me and Kayla are doing a conversation on regards to June 5th and HIV long-term survival. And so again, my name is Taylor Brown. I am a fellow here and Ending the HIV Epidemic Fellow with Georgia Equality. And if Kayla, you could introduce yourself a little bit.
Hello, everyone. My name is Kayla Quimbley. I am 22 years old and I hail from Albany, Georgia. I currently work with Georgia Equality as well as a policy advisor. And so, yeah, I'm glad to be here with Taylor today, and we're going to be having some interesting conversation and dialogue about Long-term Survivors Day and how we have progressed and the work that we still have to do.
Awesome. Okay. So starting off, if you don't mind, Kayla, just describing a little bit about yourself, who you are as a person, interest, relevancy to conversation, or just give us a brief, good idea who you are.
Okay, so loaded. So let's see. Well, let's start off and say I'm a recent graduate. I just recently graduated from Columbus State University with my bachelor's degree in psychology. So I'm very proud of myself for that. I have been in the field of advocacy since I was about 15 years old, probably around 2015, 2016 is when I actually got into the field and started my work. So basically, aside from doing advocacy, I'm a poet as well. Like, poetry is my passion. You can catch me on any given Saturday or Friday at somebody's open mic event, spitting some dope poetry for them. So that's one of the things that I do in my free time. But as a policy advisor or an advocate for HIV, that's the center of the work that I do, like in my everyday life. That's kind of what drives me, fuels me, motivates me, pretty much.
So I didn't know about that, about the poetry. Do you think your work as a advisor and advocate, those often co-align with each other with your poetry and what you present at these open mic nights?
Most definitely. So actually, the irony of it is that back in 2015, I actually this was the first time I actually went public, like doing poetry. And the theme of the poem was I had to speak about, the poem theme was it had to be surrounded around HIV or AIDS. And so at that point in my life, no one knew my status. It was a secret. And it was like this particular poetry contest though, the votes were based off social media votes. And so it was kind of like in this poem, like I spilled pretty much my inner feelings out about how it feels to be me, being a young African-American woman living with HIV. And so that kind of sparked, that's actually the poem that sparked like the door for me to step into advocacy, because I did it as like, it's a contest, it's a national poetry contest, and I ended up winning it, which is pretty cool. I got to go to Atlanta to the Fox Theater and be able to perform it like alongside some great people like Patti LaBelle coming, and that's just a few to name. It was so many great people out that day. But that particular poem opened so many doors. Like I never would have imagined like years prior to that I would have actually been doing like work in the field of HIV and educating people and inspiring people. But that happened. And so yeah, that definitely co-aligned in the beginning. And I also still get people who I've worked with along the years and passing and networking who still call me and say, hey, I got an event or something. I would love for you to come in, every year, World AIDS Day. People always want me to come out, do a poem. We want to hear something dope, we're trying to spread some awareness, share your story, share your light, all that good stuff. So yeah, they definitely overlap every now and then.
Awesome. So this is nothing new for you, being a advocate, advisor. You've been doing this since 15 and you're 22 right now. So you've been a hard 7 years just being out and open in the field and being an inspiration to everybody. That's awesome. That's awesome.
Right. Yeah.
So this conversation was focused for those who are in long-term survival. And so going along with this space of time, 7 years in the advocacy field as an advisor, do you feel that you consider yourself a long-term survivor? I know there's generally two definitions. Like we opened this up saying that the first cohort of individuals from the early 80s, those are considered long-term survivors with HIV, aging with HIV. And then there's also those who fall under different definitions of 10 years or more. Where are you with that and these sort of definitions and what's considered a long-term survivor?
Okay, so I definitely am aware with the term long-term survivor. I guess, and I guess you can attribute it to my age being a reason why I'm not really big on the term per se of being a long-term survivor. I guess I don't think about, obviously I think about living with HIV, but it's an integral part of who I am now. And so I don't look at it as I'm a survivor. I'm looking at it as I'm still conquering, because I still have to deal with it on a regular basis. So it's like I'm conquering this thing every day. You get what I'm saying? And just the term long-term survivor, it just doesn't resonate with me, and it might resonate for other people. But for me, I don't really like labels necessarily. For me, I don't like to be put in a box, I'm here, I'm still living. And that's kind of how I take it for myself. I don't know about other people or how other people feel about it, but I'm conquering and surviving. But to say I'm a survivor, like that would, to me, exclude the fact that I still have to deal with it. So yeah, that's my take on it.
So maybe long-term conquerors, I like that.
Conquerors, yeah, I like that better. I like that.
I like that. And with this sort of difference between those who were in the 80s versus today, do you think, or if you're comfortable sharing your thought on how much may have changed between then and now in regards to societal perception or societal engagement? Obviously, we're both young folk here. We weren't around in the 80s, but I do think we probably do have some opinions on what it means back in the 80s versus today, what has changed, what hasn't changed, what are the unifying struggles? And again, I know it's another long-worded question, but I'm sure you have some good thoughts on there.
Yeah, so actually, when I just thought about it as you were speaking, I had to kind of go back. And if I put myself in the shoes of somebody who got an HIV or AIDS diagnosis back in the 80s, right? At that time, HIV and AIDS was considered a death sentence. So to be able to make it to this far, that is surviving something that at the time when it was introduced that was so detrimental to so many people and was devastating, that I understand why long-term survivor is a term or a coin. And it just hit me too, because I said, if I had been in the 80s and I had had a diagnosis that they told me I might not have had more than a year, maybe 6 months to live, and to make it from the 80s and still be here and present in 2021, I most definitely would be a survivor at that point. So I just wanted to reiterate that. But as it pertains to my thoughts about how things have progressed from the 80s up into now, I think that we have made a lot of progress, a lot of strides in access to healthcare, in terms of reducing and educating people about HIV, bringing awareness to it. I also feel like the perception of it based in society now is it's not a death sentence to people anymore, but it still definitely has a negative connotation that we're still trying to eliminate it, because we're around more people, or we're more impacted by it than I think we realize. And I always like to also say that HIV is not a personal thing, it's a social thing. It's not just, they have HIV, that's their problem. But the thing is, you never know who has a diagnosis, right? So with that being said, I feel like we're all in charge of our health, and you have to be accountable for your health. And you also have to hold others accountable for their health. So that's why I say it's a social thing. We must kind of hold each other's accountable. When we talk about stopping the spread and getting to zero, it's like, okay, if we want to do that, we have to collectively work together. We can't just say, oh, people living with HIV, let's just put them in a box, sit them over there and tell them to be quiet, and they all need to procreate with each other, and we over here, that's not how it works. So it's been a lot of progress, like I said, but it's still work to be done. So I think that the prevalence is higher or continues, it's always fluctuating. But I think because of that, because of more people having diagnoses or having family members to be diagnosed, I feel like people are more, receptive to it. I meet more people who are accepting to it than people who are mean and nasty and not accepting, pretty much. So I definitely think from hearing horror stories about, the things people dealt with back in the 80s, 90s, and just on to where we are now, I definitely think the movement has been like revolutionized in terms of people also speaking out, people walking in their truth, owning their power, and not letting it scare them and put them in this fear-based mindset of like, my life is over, I can't live anymore. I feel like people like me and other people living with HIV who are on the forefront and using their voices make room for other people as well. So in that sense, it's definitely been like a lot of change, a lot of like powerful moves have been made. So I'm definitely proud of the progress we've made. Even with things still needing work, we've made a lot of strides, and I'm proud of that.
I like you bringing up that this is a social issue, and it is our engagement with each other. How with people speaking out, we realize these are our family members, these are our friends who are living and aging with HIV, and I think that is awesome. And I think that's the barrier that we have been breaking down decade after decade. Is this? There is no opposition going. There is no us, them. We are here. We are in a social issue. We are here together, and that's yeah. You worded it so succinctly. That's awesome. If you look back throughout these few decades, where we're at now with the issue, the progress we have made, how do you feel? Where are we headed after 2021? What does, if you had to project, had to guess, what are your hopes and your feelings towards the future?
So I think moving forward, I think the biggest thing now that we have more access to healthcare for people, I think that that's been a big push now. I think the next thing is to get the laws and the policies that are surrounding HIV right now, to get those revamped and changed, because a lot of them incriminate people living with HIV on terms that are just, what's the word to use, that are just unethical is the word that I would use, not fair. And I just would love to see more policy reform as it pertains to how people living with HIV are revered when it comes down to a legal standpoint. So though that progression would be my hopes and my wishes, I think at this point, we've made a lot of progress in medicine when it comes down to HIV. There are now shots that can be taken instead of pills to people who have a hard time adhering to medicine, which I'm one of those people. I really don't like pills, et cetera, et cetera. So having the option to have a shot, and also having vaccines that are in the making by certain companies. I'm not going to say any names, but certain companies are making vaccines now to where it's prevention, basically, to where, you know, we have vaccines for so many things, but we don't have a vaccine for HIV. So I feel like that would be pretty dope. So where I see it going, I think, honestly, realistically, I love, and I'm very candid at times. So excuse me if I step on any toes or hurt any feelings when I say this, but I think that from a realistic standpoint, getting the world to zero diagnoses and transmissions is not unattainable, but we would literally need everybody to work together collectively. I think that I'm okay with knowing that there are going to be more people who are not diagnosed with HIV than there are. I think I'm okay with that. I think I'm okay with knowing that we're making strides in prevention and reduction. And I think I'm okay with that. I'm okay with that being a thing. I'm okay with understanding that the world we live in is already set how it is going to be, and you can't change people. You can't change everybody. You can change some people. You can help invoke change, but you can't change everybody. So right now, what I just want to do is make it be to where people living with HIV can be comfortable in knowing that they're not going to be jailed or prosecuted for something as simple as sneezing, or even though it's, you know, not right, spitting, or just being incriminated for bodily fluids that pose no risk to other people. So things of that nature. That's kind of where I'm hoping to see the biggest change happen at.
Lots of what I'm hearing is the social inequality of just like structure of institutions, including the legal system. It seems that when I was listening to you just now, I was thinking about how so much of the struggles may be in more of how society is set up, I believe was maybe the phrasing you had used, how quality is perpetuated because of these like remnant institutions that came before us, and we're still struggling with that in decriminalizing HIV and more of the policy work and sort of these social and structural inequalities that continue to persist. And that's inspiring that this is the central point that you feel for the future is we really have to hone down on this central point, and the world will be better for it, for sure, as a whole, everybody in society.
Yeah. I definitely think that in terms of when it comes down to policy and things of that nature, I think that's also where it comes into collective, because a lot of these things are on local and state levels, needing people to rally up in communities, like to say, hey, because actually, like, I guess probably like 2019, I went and I did some lobbying in DC for policy reform, and it was pretty dope and pretty cool. And what you begin to realize is that your representatives are real people, just like you and me. And sometimes it just takes somebody coming in there to talk to them and them seeing, I don't know, it's just, for me, I feel like it's a lot of change, a lot of work that can be done. I don't think it's, I'm not saying that people are not doing work, but I feel like if we came together and actually like put all our collective powers together, I feel like we could get a lot done, a lot of change could be made. Representatives are people just like me and you, and really they're signing off on papers. They just need to see that people are they actually care and are concerned about these policies that are already enacted. So yeah, I just wanted to add that.
Yeah, I think that's, for me too, getting involved with Georgia Equality, the biggest eye opener for me is interacting in the local political sphere, knowing that these representatives are real people, our voices do have a matter, we do things that will be listened to, and I think that's this collective social movement and conversation, open conversation over time invariably is just gonna open the dam, and it'll be better for everybody involved. So that's all.
No.
Do you think there's anything I should have asked you, or you think if you would want people to know about this day in general, Long-Term Survivor Awareness Day, anything you think for our viewers now, what they should take away from this conversation?
I think the biggest takeaway that I would want people watching this right now to take away would be to just be mindful of your interactions with people. Just be kind. And it's not just to people who you think might be living with HIV, just people in general, because we're all going through things. You never know what you could say that might impact or influence the next person. That word could be the thing that kept them from doing something crazy, or it could be the word that, empowered them to do something great. So I would just say to treat everybody with love, care, and compassion. And in terms of Long-Term Survivors Day, to all the long-term survivors, I just want to salute you and hats off to you for sticking in the fight, for being here, standing firm in your diagnosis, owning that. And yeah, I just want people to be more kind, like just be more kind, peaceful, and compassionate, because the world needs that. Like, we all go through enough already. Just be nice, be kind. Those are my lasting sentiments on that.
Beautiful. That's beautiful. Like a poet, I do want to know if you are comfortable plugging anything, any open mic nights you got going on, anything regarding your poetry you kind of want to send out to everybody?
So I don't have anything coming up as of now. Things come like literally, things just pop up on my schedule. Like, I might have something. I don't have anything right now. I might have something next week, but you can follow me on social media, on Instagram at _TheRealKayn, and it's _TheRealKN. And that's my Instagram. I post a lot of poetry on there. That's where you can, kind of plug in with me, shows my personality. I interact a lot on there. So you want to follow me, stay updated with, any new poetry things I have going on, then that's where you can find me.
Thank you, Kayla. I know both of us will be involved with HIV policy work throughout this next year as an advisor and as a fellow. It's been awesome having this conversation with you, and I know we'll do great things within this next year. This past year, although quite tumultuous, left us with a bunch of hope in this sphere. There is a lot to pick up and continue fighting for. So I know we'll do good things this upcoming year.
Most definitely. Thank you. I enjoyed this conversation. It was definitely made me warm inside.
Oh, good. Well, thank you everybody who has joined us today for our Long-Term Survivors Awareness Day conversation. Feel free to keep in touch with Georgia Equality, with our social media for all the events that are happening through the month of June. For Pride Month, there is a lot on the table. So thank you again so much, Kayla, for having us. Taylor, fellow with Georgia Equality.